Well, good morning. Happy Wednesday. It is Wednesday, the 3rd of December, and yes, I'm here. Oh my goodness. So we decided to go to Chicago. We've gone to Chicago for Thanksgiving probably for the last 10 years, maybe. I don't know. Maybe not that, maybe 8 years, but it's been a long time. And my daughter and her husband have a house with a basement, and in the basement is a nice bedroom with its own bathroom. And so we can stay in that bedroom. And it is the only downside, really, is that there's no insulation between the downstairs bedroom and the upstairs. And we're right underneath the kids' room. So, unfortunately, I sleep through anything, but not everybody can. And so every once in a while, a child will cry in the middle of the night and could potentially wake somebody up. But other than that, it's a perfect situation, perfect place to spend Thanksgiving. So we flew there and flew back. Now, the interesting thing is that it's getting really expensive. We normally can fly to Chicago and back for about $350 a person. During Thanksgiving, it's usually about $500 a person. I think we bought our tickets like 3 or 4 months in advance. It was like almost $850 a person, something like that. So it's not the cheapest thing in the world to do. So I think and we go there in the summertime, and we try to get there, as often as we can, at least twice a year, Thanksgiving, and then at least once over the summer. Although during COVID, I think we went a couple extra times. But it's just not the cheapest thing in the world. So I don't know if you know this. Nobody seems to know this, but Tesla is very, very closely honing in on self-driving cars. When they get to this point, you'll be able to plug in the address of where you want to go, and it'll take you. And you won't have to basically man the steering wheel, and you'll be able to do other things while the car is driving you. And yes, it is a 30-hour drive, but it won't be an unpleasant 30-hour drive because you'll be able to do other things while the car is driving you. And the second advantage is that it'll be able to do it for about 2 cents a mile. So if it's 1,700 miles, that's probably $34, maybe $34 in electricity charges. Of course, you have to stop at superchargers to do it any efficiently. But if you know people along the way, you could probably spend the night at their house and charge the car at the same time. Anyway, the bottom line is that Jennifer loves the train. And the advantage of the train is that it's slow and steady. It does take 36 hours, 40 hours to take the train, but it's pleasant because the train is driving you, and it's slow, which is the same thing as a car. So we'll have to see how this plays out over the next 20, 30 years as we go visit various children, grandchildren. Anyway, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. We flew to Chicago. On the way back, we checked in, and it was ready to go. The flight was going to leave at 9 o'clock in the morning. They texted and said, sorry, your flight's been canceled or canceled. We'll put you on the next available flight. So we wait, and then it came back and said, sorry, there are no available flights. You're going to have to figure something else out. I'm like, what in the world? So you get on the internet and you find out that your credits still work. It's just not a flight that day. You have to take a flight the next day. So we booked a flight the next day. That flight was late because of the snowstorm in Chicago. There was a second snowstorm. So this one had a layover. We don't like doing layovers because of this very reason, but it was the only flights you could take. So we had a layover in Dallas-Fort Worth. But by the time we got to Dallas-Fort Worth and got to the gate, we were 10 minutes late for our connection flight. Fortunately, there was another flight that evening at 10:30. So basically, the bottom line is we got in at 2 a.m. yesterday morning. So I just didn't wake up for yesterday's broadcast. So this is the first time that we're back, but we had a lovely time. I hope you had a blessed Thanksgiving also. It was good this was an unusual Thanksgiving because it snowed, and it was the most snow they ever had in November on a day in Chicago on record. So it was a record snow for a November snow. And that was kind of cool, except that I wasn't dressed for it. When we go there, I don't normally bring snow clothes because it usually doesn't snow. So I have a set of clothes there, like pajamas and other things that I leave there. I have toothbrush, toothpaste, all the things that you need. I keep there a second set so I don't have to travel with it. And pajamas, just things that you don't normally take on you. So my suitcase doesn't have to be full of stuff. Anyway, I don't have snow boots there. So I might have to think about, I have plenty of snow boots here. We lived in Colorado, so I've got like 5 pairs of snow boots. I could take one with me. I might do that, just store them at my daughter's house. She has this one little cubby for us where we can store clothes and stuff. So it's very exciting. Anyway, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. We just basically sat around and played cards and laughed and had a good time. It was good to be with our whole family. Typically shows up for Thanksgiving, and that was nice. So I got to see the whole family. We got to be together for a Thanksgiving meal. It's the only time of the year. Christmas, it's just too wiggy. There's too much commotion around Christmas, so Thanksgiving's a good time to see everybody. All right. But I am back now, and I am I'm so grateful to be back, be in my own bed. All right. We kind of left off in Numbers chapter 18, and let's go into Numbers chapter 19. This is an unusual chapter, and has some good biblical significance, some good Jesus significance. And there are no birthdays today, so we'll close out that. Can you hear that? My mouse is going. I need to get a new mouse. All right, no birthdays today. All right. We are in chapter 19 of Leviticus, and we'll start reading at verse 1. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "This is a requirement of the law that the Lord has commanded. Tell the Israelites to bring you a red heifer without defect or blemish that has never been under a yoke. Give it to Eleazar the priest. It is to be taken outside the camp and slaughtered in his presence. Then Eleazar the priest is to take some of its blood on his finger and sprinkle it 7 times towards the front of the meeting. And while he watches, the heifer is to be burned, its hide, flesh, and blood and intestines. The priest is to take some cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet wool and throw them into the burning heifer. After that, the priest must wash his clothes and bathe himself with water. He may then come into the camp, but he will be ceremonially unclean until evening. The man who burns it must also wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he too will be unclean till evening." So this is odd. First of all, it's a red heifer. Apparently red heifers are kind of rare. It's without defect. It's never been under a yoke. A lot of cows or oxen or whatever these beasts are yoked, and they're used in the field. But this one is never to be yoked. A heifer, I guess in the Hebrew, it's not red heifer, but a young red cow. But because it hasn't, a heifer is one who hasn't been impregnated, or basically this is a young red cow, female, never been impregnated, never been under a yoke. So it's a special cow. It's red, and it's without blemish. It's just such an unusual thing. We see in Leviticus all these different rules about different sacrifices. We've never seen this sacrifice before. This is like a one-off, strange sacrifice. And they pick one when one comes along. I'm assuming that these red heifer cows that never been yoked don't happen that often. And so when they do, they can be sacrificed. And it's an unusual sacrifice. It goes outside of the camp. And they slaughter it there, they burn it there, and they take the blood and they kind of point towards the tent of meeting, but they don't go into the camp. It's like outside of the camp, and they sprinkle the blood towards the tent of meeting. I mean, it's just an odd sacrifice. And it's Eleazar, the son of Aaron. It's not even Aaron himself. This is Eleazar, who becomes the high priest after Aaron. But he takes this goes to him, and he sprinkles the blood. It happens outside the camp, and it's red, and it's is near an unblemished red cow. And then once this happens, then you have these cow ashes. But it's not just the cow. There's cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet wool, which is also thrown in with the heifer. And now we all know what cedar wood is. If you've ever had a cedar chest, it has an unusual smell. One of the great things about cedar is if you have wool, what is the bad thing about wool? Well, it's moths. Moths come in and they destroy the wool. They like to eat the wool. But I'm sure you know this, but if you put wool in a cedar chest or have any cedar next to the wood, the moths don't like the smell of the cedar. And so they don't, like I have a wool suit that, I don't know, purchased it 15 years ago. And that wool suit, I put cedar into with the wrapping around the suit. What do you call that? It's a suit hanger, and you zip it up. A garment bag, I guess you'd call it, a suit bag. And in that suit bag, I've got cedar. And the reason I've got cedar in there is because I don't want the moths to lay eggs that eat the wool suit. It'd be horrible to have to do a wedding and pull out your wool suit and there's moths in your wool suit. So you can put mothballs, but cedar actually works really well. So that's cedar. And then hyssop, you've all known hyssop is a plant that grows in the Middle East, in the Mediterranean area. Jesus was, when he was being crucified, they dipped water on the hyssop plant or wine on the hyssop plant and gave it to him, and he said, "No, I don't want that." Or you remember Psalm 51 where David says, "Cleanse me with hyssop and I'll be white as snow." So hyssop has been associated with some sort of cleansing ceremony pretty much for a long time. It's a plant that looks like a weed, and it has berries on it, and it's not berries, it's got flowers on it, kind of purpley flowers. If it grew here, I'd probably pull it out as a weed, but it's used quite a bit for medicinal purposes. They would make a tea out of it. You could drink. So you have cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet wool. And it all gets thrown in with the heifer, and it gets burned to ashes. And all the other offerings that we remember from Numbers, they would drain the blood out. But this one, the blood stays with the animal. It's just a one-off weird ceremony that goes out there, and they kill this heifer. And everybody who does this is unclean till the evening. And then when they come back in during the next day, they're not clean. They've waited till sunset, and then they're no longer clean or dirty, unclean. They get clean until they're unclean until sunset, basically. Verse 9, a man who is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and put them in a ceremonially clean place outside the camp. They are to be kept by the Israelite community for use in the water of cleansing. It is for purification from sin. The man who gathers up the ashes of the heifer must also wash his clothes, and he too will be unclean till evening. And this will be a lasting ordinance both for the Israelites and for the foreigners residing among them. So after the heifer is burned, there's another guy who is clean. He goes and gathers up the ashes and puts them in a place outside the camp. So all these ashes stay outside the camp in a pile. And they're kept by the Israelite community for use in the water of cleansing, which is bizarre. What is the cleansing of water? And it's for purification of sin. Verse 11, whoever touches a human corpse will be unclean for 7 days. They must purify themselves with the water on the third day, and on the seventh day they will be clean. But if they do not purify themselves on the third and seventh day, they will not be clean. And if they fail to purify themselves after touching a human corpse, they defile the Lord's tabernacle. They must be cut off from Israel because the water of cleansing has not been sprinkled on them. They are unclean. Their uncleanness remains on them. This is a law that applies when a person dies in a tent. Anyone enters the tent, and anyone who is in it will be unclean for 7 days. And every open container without a lid fastened on it would be unclean. So the sense of it is you've got these ashes outside of the tent. You've got a purification water. You take some of the ashes, you throw it in the purification water, and this is a water that's used to purify somebody who's touched a dead body on the seventh and on the third and seventh day. Now, my understanding is, from reading a little bit of research on this, is that this heifer with these ashes lasted a very long time. It wasn't like they did this weekly or monthly. Apparently, one heifer lasted up until like 540 BC. And then there's a couple other heifers that you see, I think I read 7 or 8 times between 540 BC until the time of Christ. But we're not talking a lot of heifers here. We're talking about very, very, very few heifers. And this pile of ash becomes very valuable because it doesn't take the whole of it. You take a little bit of it and you sprinkle it in the water, and that becomes the purification water that's used. Now, and then if a person goes into a tent where there's a dead person, of course, there was dead people all the time. People were dying. They had to be processed. They had to be kind of ceremonially buried. And there were people that did that. But anybody who touched a dead body was then unclean unless they had this ceremony with this dead heifer. Verse 16, anyone out in the open who touches someone who's been killed with a sword or someone who has died of natural death or anyone who touches a human bone or a grave will be unclean for 7 days. For the unclean person puts some ashes from the burnt purification offering into a jar and pour fresh water over them. Then a man who is ceremonially clean is to take some hyssop, dip it in the water, sprinkle the tent and all the furnishings and the people who were there. He must also sprinkle anyone who has touched a human bone or a grave or anyone who has been killed or anyone who has died of natural death. The man who is clean is to sprinkle those who are unclean on the third and seventh day, and on the seventh day he is to purify them. Those who are being cleansed must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and that evening they will be clean. But if those who are unclean do not purify themselves, they must cut off from the community because they have defiled the sanctuary of the Lord. The water of cleansing has not been sprinkled on them, and they are unclean. This is a lasting ordinance for them. The man who sprinkles the water of cleansing must also wash his clothes, and anyone who touches the water of cleansing will be unclean till evening. Anything that an unclean person touches become unclean, and anyone who touches it becomes unclean till evening. And then that's the end of this chapter 19. So this is a cleansing ceremony for touching dead people. And obviously, everybody dies. So not everybody dies of disease. There were other cleansing ceremonies from diseases and all that sort of thing. This seems to be one for death. And everybody dies, and so everybody's around dead people, and there's this ceremony of who touches a dead person, and they're dead, and they touch them, and they're unclean for a period of time. But this particular ceremony, they take some of the heifer ashes, they throw it in water, and then on the third and seventh day, they sprinkle the water on somebody, and they're kind of cleansed from this ceremonial death. I mean, it's a real death, but it's a ceremony that cleanses them from death. Now, you can't read this chapter and not think about Jesus, because Jesus is the true sacrifice for death. Because of Jesus' death, we will not have a second death. We'll have a first death, but we won't have a second death, which is separation from God. And there are those who said that the wood that Jesus was crucified on was cedar. There's no evidence of that, but there's wood because he was crucified on a cross. There's blood, right? But he wasn't drained of his blood. Like the heifer, he was only pierced and just to get enough of the blood to show that he was dead. There's the scarlet wool of the robe that he wore. You remember they put the robe on him and then they took the robe off of him. And then there was hyssop. They offered him hyssop, but he refused. So all three of these things are here for Jesus' death. And this is 1,000 years before Jesus, where they have this unusual ceremony. And how much there's a parallel in this ceremony with Jesus himself. It's uncanny. I mean, you've got these three things. There's the blood, there's the hyssop, there's this sacrifice of a heifer, a perfect heifer, that was unblemished, like Jesus was unblemished. There was no yoke of sin on Jesus. There was no yoke on this heifer. There's just a lot of parallels. So everybody in the New Testament that looks back at Numbers 19 sees Jesus all over this chapter. And then you have the water, that's the purification water that's sprinkled. A lot of people see that as the baptism, the waters of baptism that cleanse you from your sin. So there's a huge parallel there. There's just, when a person looks at this chapter, which is just so strange, you have all the other things, but then you have this that's kind of stuck in there as a one-off, this ceremonial heifer that gets burned without blood, sprinkled, ashes put in the purification water, and it cleanses you from sin, but specifically the sin of the death. And so this is a foretaste, or is a pre thing that is done to show you Jesus, or to point towards Jesus. And so if you are a New Testament person and you look at this, you can't help but see Jesus all the time. And it doesn't happen that often. Apparently, these ashes were carried around for a long time, and they were used in the purification ceremony. And then when you found another perfect red heifer, you burned it, and then those ashes were used for a while. And this didn't happen annually. I mean, this was just a once in a generation or two type of ceremony and these ashes would last a very, very long time. And here it is, tucked away in Numbers 19. We see Jesus. I mean, how cool is that, right? All right, so I think we'll end it there. And then we'll go into Numbers 19 at our next episode, which will be tomorrow. Today is Wednesday, yeah. Seems like a shorter week. All right, so let's close in prayer. Gracious God, thank you for keeping us safe and bringing us back together again so we can study your word. May it fill us with your grace. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, let's go over here. And thank you, all of you joining me online. Thank you. I am back. I'm back safe and sound. Yes, thank you, Cindy. It's good to be back with all of you. And thank you for joining me, for not forgetting about me. 2 days, 2 extra days. I thought for sure I'd be back easily by Sunday afternoon, and by Monday morning I'd be fresh. And turns out that I was back late Tuesday was early Tuesday morning, and I wasn't able to do it on Tuesday. But we're back now, and that episode is behind us. We can concentrate on God's word. And thanks for joining me. Pray you all have a great rest of the day. We will see you tomorrow. And until then, God's blessings. Bye.